Ooh, you touched that Bulbasaur just right.
Okay, I can tell what kind of trainer you are. Hello, everybody. I'm Ian. This is Mike from Hyperspace Hobbies. Today we're talking about transports and why we love them so much.
And because they're super dumb strong.
They are incredibly strong. We're going to go over a couple of the transports, how to use them correctly, and some of the big game plays that I've made with transports that have totally flipped the dynamic of the game.
First of all, transports are pretty darn cheap points-wise for what you get. For durability, amount of wounds.
And the safety of the unit inside.
Well, that's big, right? That's paramount. It increases the movement of the unit, usually by double.
And if you're a close combat unit, you can get that extra 3 inches of movement.
Extra 3 inches.
It means everything. You could park that right in front of a ruin and then disembark outside the ruin and get a nasty charge.
Screening. So it's a large model. It can usually block a lane, like if another tank or a large monster is coming through that can't go through walls. They can block a lane that way, or just general screening with pushing back the 9.
Yeah, one of their biggest downfalls is actually one of the ways they can be used the most effectively. They can't move through ruins, but they can block other things from moving through alleyways if those things can't move through ruins.
And being really cheap, like I mentioned, even though most dedicated transports don't have a lot of shooting or damage output, they're really strong at playing the game, doing objectives, getting fulfilling your cards, your secondaries, all that stuff, because they're super fast and they're pretty difficult to kill for the most part.
A lot of the times, if you do some solid threat saturation, and you see, a couple rhinos, a couple gladiators, and then a land raider, it can be really tough to chew through all of that.
What are you going to pick as your target? Right? Gladiator's pretty scary.
Yeah. Are you going to shoot the rhino? Probably not. And that's sort of the key. They're so low threat.
Though you should.
Though you should. They're so low threat that you probably don't really care about losing them as a player who's playing them.
No, yeah.
And you also don't really target them as a major threat as the opponent of someone who's playing that kind of stuff. One of the coolest rules that interacts with transports is Scout, and anything that can get Scout as a enhancement or a unit that inherently has Scout and can have a dedicated transport, it gives that unit Scout. I know that you've got those Chaos Boys.
Oh yeah.
And they can get Scout on a Rhino, and it becomes pretty crazy when almost immediately you can get 18 inches deep into the table with 30 wounds of Chaos Chosen.
You're darn right.
In a Rhino.
Don't forget about Tank Shock, because that will always get you a couple extra wounds just if you need to take out that thing that's got a few left.
Yeah, I think Tank Shock is one of the underrated things. It's not one of those most obvious kind of CP for VP things that we always talk about, but chipping away at something that you have no avenue to deal with something like ramming it with an orc truck and trying to roll to get some wounds off of it, it can help you in the long run if you know that you're playing that chip game. You're not going to be able to completely kill that bloodthirster, but you can ding a few wounds off him, throw grenades, do a tank shock. All of a sudden, you've done 5 or 6, maybe even 8 mortal wounds. That could be what it takes to drop them.
It's another tool in the pocket.
Yeah. Another thing that I think is the most underrated is heroic intervention on your transports. The reason being, it's all about the wording in the fight phase. Your opponent has to consolidate towards the closest enemy unit. So if you have your charging unit, your unit, and let's say a rhino, and you interact with that opposing unit, they now have to consolidate towards the closest unit, which could be your rhino. What you could do is actually split a unit in between 2 other units in the fight phase, saving something valuable and throwing some gum their way. And if you're splitting the unit in half, they don't get to dedicate full strength against anything, and a lot of units need that to destroy something like an orc truck, a rhino, or a devilfish.
Oh yeah. And now that it's 1 CP instead of 2, I mean, you're seeing it all the time.
You might as well.
Yeah.
And it gives you board control. It can scoot that. If there's 10 guys inside, you get a free charge in your opponent's turn. They can get you onto the table and closer to
even more movement.
Yeah, closer to your enemy's objectives.
Yeah. So some of our favorite dedicated transports here at Hyperspace Hobbies are, number 1, Orc Truck.
The Orc
Never
Truck.
lets me down.
Its point cost is so darn low. It's a fantastic vehicle. all in all, but its point cost is so low that it makes it number one in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, for all the other units that you could put into dedicated transports, boys are pretty soft. So the fact that they have this extra shell of protection makes a really big difference for them to be able to pounce out, get that 3 inches, and make a charge.
Yeah, and they're not only are they soft, they want to be in close combat,
Yeah.
and it's hard to just walk across the battlefield and get there.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
And the orc truck actually has some decent close combat. It's not great, but it does have one swing with that.
Is it the wrecking ball?
Yeah, the wrecking ball.
Nice.
Doesn't have a great chance to hit, but I've definitely killed like a Terminator with a wrecking ball, and I thought it was the coolest thing.
Does
in
it do
the
3
world.
damage?
It does D6.
Way to go, Orc Truck. Yeah. Number 1.
Number 1. Some close calls are the Impulsor and the Devilfish because they can advance and your unit can still get out.
And if you're a power shooting unit, that can be absolutely fantastic.
We're looking at the Breachers for the Tau. Their close range is excellent firepower.
Yeah,
And spamming them, and they're cheap too. Devilfish is pretty cheap for its cost.
I think it has 13 wounds.
Yeah.
And no, it might actually have 12, but whatever.
But it does fly.
It does fly.
It can advance. And it can deliver some soft guys to directly where they need to
That
be.
really hammer out damage.
Yeah. So flying over like a ruin and then barfing out all those breachers and they all shoot close.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
The Chaos Rhino is definitely the best of all the rhinos, just based on what you can put in it. We did mention before, putting 10 chosen in a character or 2, because it has a transport capacity of 12, is a lot of wounds inside of this one dedicated transport.
And usually with Chaos, you have a lot of things moving forward, coming at you. You have that threat saturation. There's some Venom Crawlers. There's smaller fiends moving up the table. Choosing that Rhino is difficult to do because you're seeing all these threats. That is the threat. The Rhino's not the threat. It's the guys inside. So you kind of get tunnel vision, and then occasionally those guys jump out and absolutely maul you.
Oh, yeah.
They're pretty good in close combat.
Let's hope so. So a downside for transports is when one is destroyed, then the guys inside are battle shocked. Now, I do think that this rule was a big improvement from the original, where you could run up to an objective, have your vehicle blow up, your guys get out, and then you take the objective. That was sloppy.
Yeah, that was bad play. And this refines it, makes it a lot better. There are ways to get around it.
Oh, yeah.
And you still might lose a guy or two, because every time, for every model in the transport, you got to roll a dice, and on a 1, they take a wound.
It's
just a mortal wound. They're not a dead guy, which...
It's
it
a
used
lot
to
less
be
punishing
death. It
than
used
it
to
was.
just be death.
Yeah.
For everyone, it was a dead guy. I remember I was playing James Jones. I blew up his Morkanaut, and he rolled triple 1s, and all 3 of his Mega Knobs died.
That's a heavy hit.
Yeah, it sucked like big time. And we both looked at each other and were like, that's not cool. That's not fair. That doesn't make this game better. I think taking 1 wound per roll of 1 mortal wound, it's good.
It makes it less scary to put large models inside the dedicated transports, or transports in general.
And they've increased the wound capacity on a lot of things now. They have, sword and board Marines have 3 wounds, stuff like that. It hits really hard when you lose one of those guys.
Yeah. One really fun thing you can do for your Dark Angels players, I believe it's the Unforgiven Task Force.
Yep.
If you put just some sweet old Tactical Marines with a character, I don't remember what the relic's called, but it gives you a 6-up Feel No Pain. If the unit is battle shocked, you get a 4-up Feel No Pain. So you just play aggressive with that Rhino, and it blows up, and your guys are nigh unkillable.
Yeah, you just take that Rhino, you ram it down your opponent's throat, and then when it explodes, your guys still have OC because you're Unforgiven, so it doesn't matter. You could still steal that objective, but not only that, when it explodes and the guys all stumble out, they have a 4-up Feel No Pain. It makes them incredibly durable.
Oh, yeah.
Probably the most durable Marines that you can get. It is only if they're battle shocked, but who cares?
You can guarantee it by blowing up your tank.
Yeah. So that's one pretty funky upside to being tossed out of an exploding Rhino as a 4-up Feel No Pain.
Yeah.
Dark Angels players, if you're out there, I know you have Tactical Marines lying around. Give it a try. It's hilarious.
We didn't mention how amazing the drop pod is as a master of holding the board.
Yeah, the drop pod does not get a lot of play, but I think when you use it tactically, I know I've used it a little bit, mostly as a joke, and I've always been surprised. If you hit the table and you flay the thing out, it takes up so much space.
It's like 15 inches or
it's
something.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And then you have to be 9 from all of that. You can own a side of the table pretty quick by just plopping down a cheap first turn, like hits the table right away.
Yeah.
Flay that guy open and your whole board, it's yours.
I do remember watching a pretty cool rap about it one time.
No, I don't. Never heard of that. We had somebody come up with a question. Why does firing deck and the unit's abilities not work in tandem? If I have a lieutenant with a unit inside the vehicle, why doesn't his lieutenant rules of giving them lethal hits affect when they fire out of a vehicle?
He's not on the board.
I think that was the answer that came up. It's not on the board. If it's not on the board, it won't get the rule. Which is kind of weird because all those guys still get some rules. If the guns naturally had lethal hits, they still get lethal hits.
Well, the vehicle just uses the gun profile that the guys have.
That's correct.
So if the profile of the gun has a rule, then you can use that. But any sub rules that the characters have or the unit has don't apply because it's not there.
Yeah. So if you're wanting to put big nasty stuff in a transport that has firing deck, make sure the gun is good, not the ability on the guys being good.
True.
So even things like, sadly, like tank busters, where they get +1 to hit and +1 to wound versus vehicles, it doesn't matter because they'd have to get out to get that bonus.
And that's
they
a death
can't
sentence.
shoot out the top of a truck, and it is an absolute death sentence.
Yeah.
It's a 90-point death sentence. They went down in points, which is awesome. It also used to work in Overwatch. You could firing deck with Overwatch, and they said no.
We don't need to worry about that anymore.
Yeah,
That's not a thing.
which is so good because anything with like a squad full of flamers inside.
Flamers in a tank would be bad.
Yeah,
You mean
an impulsor.
Hellblasters in an impulsor would be savage. Ludas in a truck would be incredible.
Anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or flash gits.
Oh,
Flash gits in a
Flash Gits.
battle wagon. Flash gits the best. We know it. They're the best. Best unit in the game. Flash gits. Check them out.
They might be worth the best point.
Bet point for point.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're hitting a top mark there. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with Mike and Ian here at Hyperspace Hobbies. Please like and subscribe. Let us know what your favorite transport is, and let us know some cheeky shenanigans you've gotten up to with your boys inside the truck.
See you next time.